Good morning. We're learning as a schus for Shlema Fidlan Chaya Baserach. We have to note the special sacrifice to learn without a coffee, even though you never have a coffee. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't get recognized for your sacrifice of doing without it every day.
Okay, now I know it's a sacrifice.
We're on the top of Mem Tes Amud Aleph. One line from the top line. Tani Rabba Babachana Kamei Rav. Kifse Etzeres Shachtun L'Shum Elam. Kifse Etzeres, it's the two kvasim that are brought together with the Shtei HaLechem, and they were brought L'Shum Elam, they were brought, the person had in mind, the kifse kvasim are lambs, and he had in mind rather Elam, rams, which are older sheep. So the problem with that is if you have in mind older sheep, that means you're really not having in mind for a shlamim. You're having in mind for a different animal, for an oila that's brought from for something that's older. It's brought with an older animal. It's treated like a shaloi lishma, which the din of a shlam shaloi lishma is that it's kosher, but it's not. Doesn't provide. It's not going to be a kosher kifsei atzeres. You're going to have to bring another one. Amalei Rav disagrees. Alu v'alu. He says no. It's not. It's not treated as a shaloi lishma. It's treated as if it was brought lishma, and it's going to be oil l'baylam l'shem chayva. He disagrees. Amar of Chizda, mistavra milsa de Rav. That which Rav says that it's going to be oila, it's not going to be treated as a when he has in mind when he intends it to be for a different carbon by when he's intending to bring it as a elim, but he made a mistake and he said that there's something different than what they are. Because Savar Elim v'Shachtun L'Shem Kvasim. It's talking about only where he actually, that which Rav says that if he didn't do it L'Shma, where he had in mind for something other than what it's supposed to be, that's where he thought that these are really Elim. This is a Kifsei Atzeres. Kifsei Atzeres is brought from lambs. This guy was mistaken. He was mistaken and he was malicious. First of all, he was mistaken that he thought that these are older animals. And secondly, he made a malicious intent that he tried to do it wrong, and he tried to do it l'shem kvasim. He tried to do it for a shlamim. So he ended up doing the right thing, but by mistake. Right? That means he thought he was being difficult. He thought, I'm going to do this. This looks to me like an oila, and I'm going to do it l'shem kvasim, l'shem shlamim. But the truth is, it really was a shlam, and he was mistaken. So he, by mistake, got it right. So on that we say that's where Rav Chizda says. That's where Rav says that it's going to be Allah b'alam shem chayva. Shari kvasim l'shem kvasim nishchatu. In the end, he intended to do it for kvasim, meaning for a shlamim, and that's what happened. But if he thought it was elim and he had in mind to do it l'shem elim, then it's not going to be Allah b'alam shem chayva. Why? Akira b'toyis havi akira. Even though he is mistakenly, he's trying to do the right thing here, but it was all a mistake. It was a mistake that he thought it was really an older animal, which indicates to him that it's an Ayla. But even though it's a mistake, that still is going to be Shaloi Lishma, and he's going to take it away from what it was supposed to be, and it's going to be like Allah Ba'al M'Shem Chayva. That is Rav Chizda's Shita and what Rav holds. But Rav Amar, Rav disagrees with Rav Chizda as to what Rav is saying. Akira b'toyes loy havi akira. He says no. No, even when he does it by mistake, and he's taka intending to do it shaloi lishma. He's intending to do it not for a shlom but for an oila. That since it's by mistake that he thought that that was the proper thing, that's what it was. That's not nakir. It was based on his mistake that he looked at it and he thought it was an aisle, and therefore that made him think that it's a oila. That's not going to be shaloi lishma, and therefore it's going to be um that would be according to Rav Allah ba'al M'Shem chayva. Amar Rabba. They changed the Mefarshim change it from Rava to Rabba because of the way the Gemara ends up. That it says Machshav Dominka lePasur Achmana, which is the shita of Rabba in the beginning of the Masechta. Amar Rabba Masvin Nashmaitz. Could ask a kasha on what I just said. That I said that according to Rav, Akira b'toyis leva Akira, and it's not. It's going to be Allah b'am shem chayva. That we say, where do we? What's the kasha? Hakayinim shepiglu b'migdash. The kehanim. And this is going to bring back to one of my favorite topics. The kehanim who were messing things up in the Beis Hamikdash. They were mafagel a carbon in the Beis Hamikdash. They did the zrikas dam with the machshava. They were shechted it with the machshava to be zarik at chutz lozmanim. Meizidin. This is a Gemara in Gittin. It says meizidin chayavin. If they do it on purpose, they have to pay the owner of the carbon, which is something I've always wondered about. Like how could this kayan go mess up someone's carbon and he gets off scot-free? One says no, he's not scot-free. If he does it on purpose, he has to pay the owner of the carbon. The carbon he invested money in an expensive par for his carbon, and it didn't came to nothing, so he's going to have to pay him back. Hashayim pturim. But the mashmois from that, if he did it b'shayg, he's potter. V'tani Allah, and we learned on this, pigul and pigul, heichidam. We said on that, but the Bryce explained this Mishnah, right? We said that if he does it b'mezid, he has to pay back. If he does it b'shayg, he doesn't have to pay back. And we said, but pigulin is a pigul. However, even though it was b'shayg, we said he's going to be potter from paying back because it was by mistake, but it's still going to be pigul even though he did it by mistake. Hey chidam, what is the case that we're saying that he did it b'shayg and we're saying that he doesn't have to pay? If we're talking about it really was a chatas. The person was mechuyev to bring a chatas. And this kayin who brought it knew it was a chatas. And he had in mind to do it l'shum shlamim. And that's where it was, that was his, meaning he had it in mind l'shum shlamim for the zman of a shlamim. He had in mind to eat it chutz l'zmanai. Hayshaygig mezidin have it. That's not a shaygig. We said if he's a shaygig, he's potter, but his pigul is a pigul. How is that a shaygig? That he did it on purpose. Elav the kasava shlamimu. Elamai, this person, the original owner was bringing as a chatas, and the kain who brought it thought it was a shlamim, and that's why he extended the time for it. Become a chashav l'shem shlamim muktani pigul and pigul. And we said, even so, he made a mistake. He thought it was a shlamim and he brought it as a shlamim. And we said the pigul is a pigul. Even so, the carbon itself is possible, even though he doesn't have to pay for it. The reason why he's not paying for it is not because the pigul didn't take place, because it was only by mistake. But the reason is because he was saying he doesn't have to pay because he did it because he was a shaygig. So civically, there's no civil penalty. You can't sue him for it, but it's still going to be a pigul carbon. So you see, it still has a din of pigul, even though the koyed's machshava was based on an error. Now No, Abaye says, I'll answer. It's talking about Ein Chanami, the Kayan knew that it was a Chatas, but Chashav L'Shum Shlom is doing L'Shum Shlom. Uba'aymer Mutter. His mistake over here wasn't that he was being accurate from what it was, where he was being accurate. So why is he only a shaykh? We're calling him a shaykh. We said if he's making a mistake and he thought it was a chat, it was a chatas, and he did it l'shem shlama by mistake, that's not a shaykh. We're talking over here, Zakta Gemara, it was a mistake because he did it l'shem shlam, but it wasn't akira. It wasn't where it was akira b'tayis. He only thought he knew he was in mechasher l'shem shlamim, but he thought you're allowed to be mechasher l'shem shlam. He thought this was a very ignorant kayin, and he thought you can change the designation. There's no problem with changing the designation of the carbon. So it's not an akira b'tayis. He knows what he's doing. He just he's mistaken about the consequences of doing that. So that's how you can have such a thing, that you have a carbon that's b'shoigig and it's going to be pigel, because even though Rabbah holds that akira b'tayis is not an akira, this person was a shoigig in the sense that he thought he wasn't going to get punished, so therefore he doesn't have to pay, but it's still going to have a dim pigel because it's not going to be akira b'tayis, because he wasn't ma'akir from what it was. He knew it was supposed to be a chatz. He just thought I could change it to be a shlam. Masav Rav Zera. Rav Zera asks another kasha on Rabbah, that he says akir b'toyis lehav akir. If someone is mechashev on a carbon by mistake, that's not going to take effect. It's not going to be considered that it's it's going to be all about Shem Chayva because we're not going to disregard it. If Shimon Omer, this is going back, what are we up to? Memtes? A month and a half. Back to the beginning of Menachos, the first blot that was very difficult blot. Rav Shimon Omer, Rav Shimon argued, and he said, Kol Menachos shenikmetzu shaloi l'shmon kseris. Ba'al l'baylim shem chayva. He says, l'gabe mincha, there's a rule that if you do the kmitza shaloi l'shma, it's not going to have a din of loy al l'baylim l'shem chayva. Rather, it will be kosher and it will be al l'baylim l'shem chayva. She'ena menachos daimus l'zvachim, because of a difference. There's a fundamental difference between menachos and zvachim. Sha'akayim it's machlas l'shum machashas. Someone who brings one type of mincha, l'shem a different type of mincha, let's say a machvas, which is a dry, a hard mincha, for machashas, which is a fluffier mincha. Maseh machichin aleh shehi machvas chareva or shehi machvas. If or it's talking about a thin pan versus a thicker pan. So you look at the mincha, and he's saying, I want this to be, it's supposed to be a machvas, it's supposed to be the thinner one, and he says, I have in mind for the thicker one. But you look at it, you could see it's a thinner matzah. So his maseh, amechichan aleh, the actions that he's doing, when you look at the mincha, it shows that what he's saying is not true, and therefore it will not have a din of a shaloi l'shma that's loyal about l'shem chayva. It'll be treated as if it's l'shma, because we disregard what he's saying, because we look at his actions belie his words. The same thing, chareva l'shem blula. He has in mind a dry mincha, one that doesn't have oil, and he does it for one. He says, I'm bringing it as a belula, something with oil in it, but you look at it, there's no oil. But by zvachim, there's no such distinction. Whatever carbon it is, you shech the animal, and you makabel it in a kli, and you zayrik it on the mizbeach. And if you remember, we asked over there all the questions that there's different zrikas that you do for different karbanos. So we dealt with that back on Amud Beis. So Zaktima, hey chidami, what is the case? If we're talking about that he knows that it's a machvas, this kayin, he knows that he's looking at it and he sees that it's thinner, and he says, nevertheless, I'm going to have in mind that it should be a mecheshes. Ki maseh mechicha mehavi hamiyaka ka'akala. What do we care that it's maseh mechicha aleh, but he's intentionally going and and trying to be ma'akaret. So if this thing that we're saying that maseh mechicha aleh, it's only when it's a mistake. When the person is betayis, we say maseh mechichan. Well, we're going to disregard what he does. But if he's doing the fact that he's doing something intentionally, he doesn't care about what it looks like. He's nevertheless, even so, he's saying, "I wanted to be a macheshes." He was ma'aker. It should be treated as shaloi lishma. At least that's the Havamina of the Gemara. Elalav the kasava macheshesi. Elamai, he was mistaken. He was a really not the brightest kohen. And in spite of the fact that it's sitting right in front of him, it's a thinner matzah. He thought it. He said it's a. He was half blind, and he thought it was a macheshesi. Which we say the hachahu the masah machichala. But the Gemara is saying, according to Rav Shimon, was saying only because anyone could look at it and see that it's a mistake. That's why we're saying it's not going to be. It's going to be alul ba'al shem chayva. But just from the simple fact that he made a mistake, that would not be enough to make it that it's going to be alul ba'al shem chayva. Ba'alma kir b'tois havi akir. You see, not like Rabbah, that when someone makes a mistake, it would be enough. It's only because it's a mistake together with Maseh Mechicha, together with the fact that it's evident from the circumstances. But without that, Akir b'tois have akiras. That's not like Rabbah. Rabbah said, if someone makes a mistake in general, even without Maseh Mechicha, it's Le'al Shem, it's Alul Bam Shem Chayva. Amalei Abaya, Lo'alam the Yada the Machvasi. He says, no, we're going back on the original thing we said. He knows that it's a machvas. He's having in mind for machashes. The ka'amet kimasah machicha ma'havi. If we're looking at it, what does it make a difference? How could this be a shaloi l'shma? That that where someone that you can't that you could say that something that you could say machshava of Maseh Mechichan, even though the person himself is going against that, the kohen who's bringing it is saying, "I intended to be a macheshes." Rava l'tamei dama Rava machshava loy minkara pasol rachmana machshava de minkara loy pasol rachmana. He's going. This is according to Rava. Rava had explained Rav Shimon back on Amid Daf Gimel that a machshava that only a mincha that you brought, where you can't tell that it's not as he said. It's only when it's not Maiseh Mechichan Aleh that's going to be possible. But something that is machshava de minkara, that you could see that it's Maiseh Mechichan Aleh, that it's not correct, that's not going to be possible. It's not going to be considered shaloi lishma because we disregard. We can not look at what he says, and that's even when it's on purpose. So therefore, that's why, since we're talking about where he did it, b'mezid, the kohen b'mezid was being ma'akeret, the machshava. There's nothing to do with Rabba's din that he said that it's someone who made a mistake. We're not talking about a mistake over there.
Is this specifically Rav Shimon or just
There's all in Rav Shimon. We're just saying Rav Shimon Shita. We don't end up with Rav Shimon. But this is back from Amud Beis, where we were talking about Rav Shimon, but the way Rav Shimon discusses it is l'chayra mechiach, that kasha was that it seems to be from Rav Shimon, that he holds not like Rabbah that says that akira b'tois lehave akira. Zok the Mishnah. Hatmidin ein ma'akvin es hamusafin. V'lo hamusafin ma'akvin es hatmidin. The Gemara is going to explain exactly what this means. Right, every day there was brought chatzi. I think what was it? A chatzi isarin in the morning and a chatzi in the afternoon. There was a So the Talmud they were brought as oilus, right? They were. I'm sorry. For some reason I was mixing it up with the chalas, with the mincha. Every day there were two oilus that were brought, one in the morning and one at night, and on days that were Shabbos and Yom Tov and Rish Chodesh, you also had musafim. So we say the Tmid are not ma'ak of the Musafin, and the Musafin not ma'ak of the Tmid. The Gemara is going to explain this means which one comes first. But we're going to go through in the Gemara what it means. You can have different Musafim. One is not ma'akiv the other. The Gemara is going to explain this ma'akvin is not the same as the other ma'akvin in this parak. Whenever we say ma'akvin until now, it means that you can't have one without the other, but there's no reason, there's really no connection between the Tmidin and the Musafin. There's no reason to think such a thing. The Gemara is going to explain, we're talking about which one comes first, not which one, that you can't have one without the other. But the Musafin, l'chayr, could be talking about that, but l'chayr, it's also talking about which one comes first. So the Mishnah Vaita. Lo hikrivu keves ba'bayker, yakrivu bein ha'ambayim. If you didn't bring the tamid shel shachar, the keves in the morning, you should still do the one at night. Amr of Shimon, Amos of Shimon says that's limited only where you didn't bring the tamid shel shachar because of a mistake or you were forced to, you didn't have. Rav Shimon says if you didn't do the one in the morning, you shouldn't do the one at night because they are really two parts of the same tamid. So if you're missing part of it, according to Rav Shimon, if you're missing part of it, you ruined. If you did it amazing, you didn't bring half of it, you've ruined the whole thing. Like tiruk tyrus babayki tiru bein habayim. If you didn't bring the tyrus in the morning, you should bring makter it by night. Rav Shimon v'kula ha'isa kreva bein habayim. Rav Shimon says if you didn't bring in the morning, you should be makter it at night. You should do the whole thing, right? The tyrus. I'm sorry, this is what I was referring to before. That there's the amount of was a mana, and it was divided up into two halves. That half was brought in the morning and half was in the night. And Rav Shimon says it really was all part of the same ketairis, but we divided it into two. So therefore, if you missed in the morning, you make it up at night and you do a full mana. So the way the Mefarshim understand this is the explanation of Rav Shimon. He's saying when you mechanech the mizbeach hazav, they did it with Ketores Hasam and did a full mana. So that's the proof that the mana is the actual amount of the Ketores that just gets divided up into two parts. So therefore, even if you missed in the morning, that's not a separate chiyuv than the nights, than the afternoons, because they were each half a mana was really two halves of the same whole. So you do the whole thing. The Tanakama disagreed. He said it's two separate chiyuvim, a half man in the morning, a half at night. So if you missed it in the morning, you don't bring it at night. The Mishnah continues, and this is just once we brought this up, L'chayr will bring this up. The mizbeach, the outside mizbeach, was mechunach with the tamid shel shachar. The shulchan was mechunach. It was first inaugurated with the lechem apanim that was put on it. B'Shabbos, when it was put on Shabbos, that was the first time it was used, and that's the way they set it up. And not the menorah, except for with the shivaneris that they put at night. That's how you mechanach each one of these things. The Gemara is going to talk about l'may nafkamin. Ba'minei Rav Chia bar Rav Meir Rav Chizda. Tzibur she'en lo tmidim u'mesafin. He asked the following question. A tzibur that does not have enough money to bring both the tmidim, the two oilers, and also the musafin that are required for that day. You could have a lot of musafin in a day. So which one comes first? What do you use the money for? Talking about hechidami. Tmidin the yuma, musafin the yuma. If it's coming to Shabbos, that Shabbos happens to be also, let's say, Yom Tov, it's coming to a Yom Tov. It's coming to, and you have the question: which should we spend the money on? Should we spend it on the tamid, the regular tamid that you bring every day, or should we bring it for the musafin? Pshita tmidin adifis. Certainly, you should bring the tmidin first. The havlu tader umekudish First of all, it's tadir that you bring the tadir, the tamid, the tadir v'sheina tadir kaidim. Whatever's more common, that's what you do. Whatever more consistent goes first. And then secondly, the tadir for that day. Let's say it's Pesach, the first day of Pesach. That tadir also has the maila that it's being brought on Pesach. So the musaf is only brought on Pesach. So the tadir is equal to it as far as being kaddish. It's the same kaddish as the musafin, and it's also tadir. We're talking about it's on Pesach, and you have enough money. You already brought the tamid for that day. But now the question is, should we spend the extra money or the extra, we have the extra kissed lambs, the oilus, and the question is, should we bring them for today's carbon, for today's musaf, or should we wait for the following day's tamid? The following day's tamid is going to be tadir, but it's not makudish. And today's carbon, today's musaf, is makudish because it's for a yomtiv. Which way do we look at it? Amalei tnisua. We'll learn it out from our Mishnah. We said in the Mishnah that neither one has preference. What is the case where we're saying that the Tmidin are not ma'akev the Musaf and the Musaf are not ma'akev the Tmidin? If we're talking about where he has them, he has all of these karbanas. He has enough to bring both of them. And we're saying you could be either of them first. You could choose. You could do whichever one you want first. But Tanya minayin shelo yedavar kaid mutamit shachar tamalayma baruch alei oila. V'amar Rava oila rishayna. We have a pasuk that says v'arach aleha oila. You should put on the mizbeach the oila, and that's talking about the oila is the oila rishayna, the tamid shel shachar, and nothing can come before the tamid shel shachar. So you can't say that when we say in the Mishnah that the nam akav the musaf and the musaf and nam akav the tmidin just means which one comes first, because we know the tamid shel shachar comes first. Ella pshita the lesla. We're talking about where he doesn't have enough. You don't have enough animals to do both the musaf and the tamid. The idiyuma, if it's talking about the same, we're talking about the tamid of that day against the musaf of that day, amai tadim mekudesh tadir adif. Like we said the cheshbon before, certainly the tamid will come first because it's both tadir and it applies for that day. It has the kedusha of that day, which is the musaf only has the kedusha of the day. It's not tadir. Elalav the lamachar. Elamai must be the tamid of the next day against the musaf of that day, and we're pitting mekudesh against tamid. Uktani ein ma'akven zeh, and we said that there's no preference for one or the other. Alma ki adadininu. So you see from this that when you have tadir against mekudesh, neither one comes first. So that's the answer of Rav Oven's question. Of Chiya bar Oven's question. Abaya says no. This raya is nishken raya from our Mishnah Lo'olam de Isla. The Mishnah is talking about where you have sufficient karbanis for both of them. So we're not talking about which one gets precedence if you don't have enough. Ulakadim. And we're talking about which one comes first. The kashalach shalei davar kaidim mitz the shalei davar kaidim. We have a pasuk, we brought from a pasuk that says that nothing can come before the Tamid Shel Shachar, mitzvah ba'almahu. That's just a mitzvah that l'chatkila the Tamid Shel Shachar should be first. But our Mishnah is saying that one is not ma'ak of the other. If b'di eved you brought the musaf before the Tamid, it's still going to be a kosher carbon. It's not saying that it should come first. It's when we say ein ma'akvin, it means that if you brought the musaf before the tamid, you haven't pasaled your musaf or the tamid for that matter. Tashma ein peichs, and so therefore we don't have this nishken raya that our Mishnah is talking about Rav Chia Bar Oven's question, it could be talking about it just saying a din, the gabi, which one comes first, and therefore we still have a question in Rav Chia Bar Oven, Taka, if you don't have enough for the Musaf and the Talmud, which one comes first? Tashma. Ein peichsin mishisha tloyim hamvukarim belishkas hatloyim kedei l'shabbos l'shnei yamim tovim shel Rosh Hashanah. There's a din. You can't have less than 6 checked animals, 6 checked kvasim in the lishkas hatloyim, the place where they kept them. In order, you should have enough for Shabbos and 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. You need 2 per day, and on the days of Shabbos and Yom Tov, you're not going to be able to be mevakar new ones, so you have to have a minimum of 6. Heridami. Ilema de islay tmidin umusafin tuva. This lay tmidin musafin tuva hava. If we're talking about there's enough for tmidin, then there's I'm sorry, if there's tmidin and musafin, there's enough for both of them. Tuva have it. That's a lot more than 6, right? The musafin could be whatever it is. It could be what did Rashi say? Ve'esem v'tarti tlayim b'inan. You need 22 tlayim because you can have 15 musafin. So 6 would not do the job. Elalav de lesle. Elamai, we're talking about, well, you don't have a lot. You don't have enough to cover the musafin. Ushmami no, tmina nadifi. We see from here, from the fact that we say you only need to have 6, vice versa, if you only have 6, you bring the tmidim before you bring the musafim. Even though on the first day, right, you're going to bring the tamid, and then let's say the following 2 days, let's say the first day is, let's say Wednesday and Thursday are Rosh Hashanah. So you can bring the tamid on the first day, because let's say that goes first, but then you have a chiyuv to bring your musafim of Rosh Hashanah and of Rosh Chodesh for that matter. So why don't you say that then you have to bring those first because they are Mekudesh, and to put that against the Talmud of the next day of Friday, if we're going to say that the musafim goes first, you wouldn't need 6 because the 2 for the following 2 days are going to get swallowed up. They're going to be used for the musafin before you get to those days. If you say that the musafin of that day comes before the tminin of the next day. So we're lo'olam the islay. We're talking about where he has enough. Dalid yom koydem shchita. We're talking over here a specific din that's only relevant to tmidim. There's a special din that the lambs that were used for the tamid have to be checked for 4 days before shchita. Like we're going to see, we learn out from Pesach that they checked the lambs that we use for the Korban Pesach and Mitzrayim for 4 days. There's a special din on that, which does not apply to the musafin. So when we say you have to have 6 for the 3 days of Shabbos plus 2 days of Yom Tov, that's talking about the specially checked lambs. Umani ben bagbag. This is all going to ben bagbag. The time ben bagbag. Where do we know that the tamid, the animals for a tamid need to be checked for 4 days? Kaidem shchita, before the shchita. The tamid laima tishmer lahakav li b'mayadoi. The pasuk says about the the Talmud says the din of Tishmeru, and and it said by Pesach that you should watch it until the 14th day. They set it aside on the 10th day of Nisan, and it should be a mishmeres for the 14th day. Amalei Ravina Ravashi Hani Shisha Sheva Havi. He says, but there's a second problem. You're saying you only need 6 to cover the 2 days, the day of Shabbos plus the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, and then you're covered. You always have to have that on hand. But you really need 7. The Ika Ditzavra, the Tilsa B'Shapsa. You need the one of Erev Shabbos right before Shabbos. You're going to need to use one right before the end of Shabbos, but right before Shabbos starts. So you really need seven. You need that one. You're not going to be able to go checking more after that. So you have to have for that plus the following 3 days. You also need of the morning after Shabbos, when Shabbos is the last day. So Kasha, the labasa da akriv kama. When it said that it says it's talking about the ones that you need. I'm sorry, you need not after Shabbos. You need the Tamid where Rosh Hashanah is following Shabbos. You're going to need. I'm sorry, I got it wrong. But no, ikka tetzafra the tlasa b'Shabbos. I got it wrong. I read that as 6th day of week. It means the Tuesday. When Rosh Hashanah is after Shabbos, you're going to need right after Shabbos in the morning. You're not going to be able to check it till the morning, and then it's going to be too late. You're going to have to use it up. So now we're asking about what you also need for Erev Shabbos. That's going to be the 8th one. So the Gemara says, no, we're not worried about the one of the 8th. The Mishnah is saying how many you need after you bring on Friday the Tamid. So that's why you only need 7, because you need also for after on Tuesday. But what about that 7th one? What about the one right after Yom Tov? So Gemara elatana ba'almakoi. We're not talking about that you have to have these 6 because of the issue of Shabbos and Rosh Hashanah. We're saying that there's a general rule you always have to have. This is just telling you to remind you that you always have to have 6, because we want to have 6 in order there should be enough ready in case something happens. You should always have should always have backup. And the 6 is that we said that it has to be for Rosh Hashanah and Shabbos. That's what you need 6 in Manamam. That's just a way to remind. Dekanami the Tani K'dei Shabbos, the Loik Tani L'Shabbos Ulebeis Yom Time Shel Rosh Hashanah. It didn't say for Shabbos and Shnei Yomim Shel Rosh Hashanah. It says K'dei L'Shabbos Ule Shnei Yomim Shel Rosh Hashanah. It should have said K'dei. It should have said, instead of saying Kedei l'Shabbos Ula Shnei Yom Tov, it should just say without Ula Shnei Yom Shel Rosh Hashanah. It should say Kedei l'Shabbos and Beis Yom Shel Rosh Hashanah. What does it say? Ula. So that's just it's a semana ba'alma to remind you of the din of 6 days. Shmami no, ein echanami. We leave it like that. Okay, we'll stop over here.